Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. We are back here today after the Big Ten tournament has come to a conclusion. Now we have a bracket. There is so much to talk about in the world of college basketball. I'm recording this for the first time in months where I can look out my window and it's still light out. And if you're from Indiana, you know when it's light out later in the evening, that means it's March Madness time. The Boilers are headed to Milwaukee to take on Yale in the first round on Friday after Purdue fell to Iowa in the Big Ten Tournament championship game. No time to be upset though. It's bounce back right away because all eyes are on the big dance. We will recap Purdue's run to Sunday in the conference tournament here a little bit. Don't want to go too deep into that because it is tournament time. Going to discuss Yale, going to talk about the East region, answer all of your questions here on the show. Thank you to you all who sent those in. This is one of my favorite episodes of the year, right up there with the football and basketball season previews. So let's quit wasting time. Let's jump right in. But first, if you don't already, follow the show on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Plenty of content there, always having a conversation. It's only going to be more lively here over the next few days with so many high-stakes games. Tons of stuff to talk about. And subscribe to Boilers and Beyond wherever you get your podcasts. We will be back here next week no matter how this weekend goes. But make sure you don't miss those episodes. We'll be doing stuff all year long, especially once basketball season wraps up. We're not going to slow down too much, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. Getting into the Big Ten tournament here, it was a pretty crazy Big Ten tournament. Purdue, the only team with a double bye to win a game in the Big Ten tournament as they took down Penn State 69-61 in the nightcap on Friday, before taking down Michigan State 75-70 in the second game of the day on Saturday. That got Purdue to the Big Ten championship game for the first time since 2018, but they were unable to deliver their first Big Ten title since 2009. Iowa leads for the most part coast to coast. Purdue only led for 2 minutes in the game. The Hawkeyes get a Big Ten title, 75-66. I'm not going to really dive deep into these games individually. You all watched them, and at this point, if you're like me, the conference tournaments feel like they were a week ago already because you're spending all day looking at brackets, listening to bracket podcasts, reading bracket articles, at least if you're like me. So it is disappointing that Purdue wasn't able to win the Big Ten tournament, at the end of things. I've said all year that this team deserves something in the rafters of Mackey Arena to remember them by. Not that anyone's going to forget this team. They did some pretty remarkable things, including being ranked number 1 for the first time in school history. But Purdue's missed 2 opportunities now to put something in the rafters. That comes from the Big Ten regular season and the Big Ten tournament. You've got 1 shot left. Purdue raises banners for Final Fours and championship game appearances. So you have 1 chance left to do that, but I thought this was a winnable game for Purdue. It is certainly difficult to beat a good team 3 times, especially a good team that is playing like one of the best teams in the country right now. Iowa's been on fire, but nonetheless, it is a disappointment. Purdue did a really nice job in the first 2 games of this tournament. I thought they got off to a slow start against Penn State, but they came back and really withstood some of what Penn State threw at them. Jalen Pickett was really tough on Purdue. John Hara was unbelievable, just the effort he showed down low. But Purdue was able to withstand that. They really led wire to wire against Michigan State, and even when it got a little close in the second half, I never felt like the game was in too much jeopardy. I know it was, but I just never had that feeling of panic time, and neither did Eric Hunter, who drilled a pair of big-time threes to really push Purdue out in front for good in this one. And then Iowa. Purdue did not play so well in that game. Turnovers, turnovers, turnovers. It's the story of the season with this Purdue team. It reared its ugly head yet again in the Big Ten Tournament championship game. We'll get to that more here in a minute. But, the big story for Purdue in this Big Ten Tournament came Friday night with a little over 4 minutes to go in the first half. Brandon Newman checks in because Sasha Stefanovic picked up his second foul. Newman gets his first action since early February, that game at Michigan. His first points since the game at Illinois back in January. He had 12 points, 4 of 4 shooting, and got back into the rotation. It had been a while for him. It had certainly been an arduous season for the sophomore from Valparaiso, but that was the story. Purdue fans had been clamoring for him for a long time. He's a popular player. Guys like him. But he hadn't been playing for a while. And a lot of people got their wish, and he capitalized on his opportunity. It was very, very easy to feel good for Brandon Newman, to see him smiling out there, to see him knocking down shots. He played with excellent intensity on defense. That was a major contributor to why he was not playing for the better part of Big Ten season. A simple lack of defensive awareness, I guess, is the right way to put it. Just struggled on defense, and you can tell he learned something from his time off the floor. That's exactly the response you would like to get, but it's not always the easy response to get. That was very good to see from Newman. His energy was contagious. I thought he helped Purdue a ton when they kind of needed it in the first half of that Penn State game. He wasn't as impactful scoring the ball in the last 2 games, but regardless, I think he's back in the rotation here as Purdue goes to the NCAA Tournament. You do have to give some credit to Iowa for the way they played in this Big Ten Tournament. Thursday, they put up over 110 points against Northwestern. That's a lousy Northwestern team at the end of the day, but, they did an excellent job there. They beat a Rutgers team that is never easy to play against. The Saturday game against Indiana was wild. Iowa completely stole that game. Indiana led throughout. Jordan Bohannon hits a couple threes to make it, put Iowa in position, and then he banks in the 35-footer in Trey Galloway's face. Crazy stuff. And, I thought when Purdue was making a little bit of a run towards the end of that game, I thought, man, maybe Purdue can flip that script on Iowa. Maybe Purdue can pull one out that they don't deserve to win. That didn't end up happening at the end of the day. Purdue turned it over more and missed shots. Iowa didn't. But you have to give credit to Iowa. That is a really good team. That team lost a ton from last year. I mean, you think about it. They lost Luka Garza. They lost Joe Wieskamp. They lost C.J. Frederick. That's a lot to lose. They lost someone else, I think, too. But those were the main 3 that they lost. And heck of a job by them, by Fran McCaffrey, to replace that group and do a really good job this year. Especially, Keegan Murray is looking like, man, unbelievable. If there was any doubt that Johnny Davis was going to win Big Ten Player of the Year, if they voted on it after the Big Ten Tournament, I'm almost positive Keegan Murray would have won it over Johnny Davis. He was that good in the Big Ten Tournament. I thought Jaden Ivey was really good for Purdue. He had some really impactful plays in all 3 games, really, going to the basket and making plays off the bounce. What he didn't do as well was knock down threes. He was, I think, 1 of 8 in the championship game against Iowa. Purdue as a whole did not shoot well. Sasha Stefanovic didn't shoot well. 5 of 20 as a team from 3. So that doesn't help. That was a big problem. That's part of why Purdue lost, though the turnovers are your main culprit. Jaden Ivey did a nice job, though. You're glad he's out of there healthy because he hit the floor really hard a number of times. The floor was weird. It looked super slippery, guys slipping left and right. But good tournament for Jaden Ivey. Travion Williams had a nice tournament as well. Him and Ivey both made the all-tournament team. Those guys were very good. I thought Travion Williams showed some serious leadership from a senior out there in the Big Ten tournament, a guy who really wanted to win. And this time of year, you need your seniors to step up and do that. Eric Hunter Jr. did as well. There's no doubt Sasha Stefanovic wanted to win. He did not have his best weekend, but the effort is there from those guys. But, look, Purdue missed another opportunity, but they have to move forward now because Friday, 2 p.m. on TBS, Purdue gets Yale in the round of 64 to tip off the NCAA tournament for Purdue. I am thrilled this is a 2 o'clock game. I love that. I took Thursday and Friday off work, so I am none too concerned about what time Purdue plays. Yale was the 2 seed in the Ivy League tournament. They upset Princeton. I guess a minor upset. It was a 1 versus 2 seed, so nothing crazy. But they held on late despite Princeton really giving them a run for their money. Same head coach has been there forever. James Jones in his 22nd season. He's been there since 1999. Remember, what's interesting is that, Yale didn't play last year. The Ivy League canceled the 2020-21 season due to COVID. So Yale didn't play last year at all. This is a program that has won a single NCAA tournament game. That was in 2016 when they took down Baylor. This group is a little different. Probably not, at least from a metrics perspective, not quite as strong as that group, but they're led by 6'1" guard Azar Swain, 19 points a game, shoots about 42% from the field, but 35% from 3, and a lights-out 89% from the foul line. Jaden Gabadon, 6'5" guard, he puts in 12 a game on roughly 50% shooting, though he's not as much of a three-point threat. They don't have a ton of size. I will say that about Yale. It is not a team that, on paper, is going to match up with Purdue very well. Yale shoots, what do they shoot from 3 as a team? 33% from 3 as a team. That's where you would look for Yale to spring an upset, is they need to shoot well from 3. They don't play terribly slow. Yale is 86th in the country in tempo on KenPom. Possessions per game. So I think that's good for Purdue. Yale's going to try to go 5 out as much as they can. They're not going to try to post up much, but no one averages more than 5 rebounds per game for this group. And that's kind of concerning. I think if you're Yale, you would like to have a little bit more of a physical presence, at least on the glass, to match up with Purdue, because Purdue is so good of an offensive rebounding team, though Purdue is not a great defensive rebounding team, as the Iowa game reminded us yet again. They're 203rd in offensive efficiency, 103rd in defensive efficiency. That's right around Purdue's level there. That's a decent enough defensive team for a mid-major. The numbers are a little bit harder to gauge from a national perspective when the mid-majors are being factored in. But, they're not a bad group. They are the lowest rated 14 seed on KenPom. So, you take that for what it's worth. Obviously, it doesn't mean everything. KenPom numbers can be finicky sometimes, but the guy's pretty good. His numbers tend to be pretty solid, pretty reputable. There's a reason everyone references them. Yale does shoot 74% from the free throw line. You like that a lot if you are the Bulldogs. They turn it over at an okay rate. Nothing crazy, nothing out of the blue there. It's going to be interesting. Purdue enters this with some pressure on them, no doubt. They didn't win the Big Ten tournament. They didn't win the Big Ten regular season, and they're coming off of a first-round loss last year to North Texas. I will add, North Texas was a better three-point shooting team than this group. I do think there's a big difference between a 13 and a 14 seed. I'll knock on wood for that, but you never know. You need to get off to a much better start because that plagued Purdue against Iowa. They got off to a slow start. They were able to overcome it against Penn State, but there haven't been many games this year where Purdue has started well and then lost. They've only lost 7 times, but that's something, if Purdue can get off to a good start, I think you're in a good spot. Now, you look at the rest of this region, because it was all the talk of Selection Sunday for Purdue fans, and as it should be. Purdue got a very difficult draw, in my opinion. It was certainly a bummer to lose out on Indianapolis as the host for the first and second rounds, and it was a bummer to lose out on being in the Midwest Regional, so that should you advance to the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, you're doing it in Chicago, where you will have a crowd edge over virtually anybody. A lot of Purdue alums in that area. Instead, you're going to Milwaukee for the first 2 rounds, and if you get out of there, you're going to Philadelphia. It's not ideal. You have Baylor as your 1 seed. Kentucky is your 2 seed, which I thought really stunk. UCLA is the 4, and then Purdue-Yale winner will get Texas or Virginia Tech in that round of 32, which right away, that's what jumps out to me. Texas terrifies is a strong word because they haven't lived up to their preseason hopes this year. But you have some not so great history with Chris Beard in the NCAA tournament. Most of you probably need not be remembered. Chris Beard was the head coach at Little Rock in 2016 when they upset Purdue in the round of 64, and Chris Beard was the head coach of Texas Tech in 2018 when they took down Purdue up in Boston in the Sweet 16. That was after, of course, Isaac Haas broke his elbow in the first round of the NCAA tournament against Cal State Fullerton. If you can get past Texas, and Virginia Tech's no slouch. They just played their way into the NCAA tournament with a ACC tournament championship. You get Kentucky as the 2 seed, which for most of the season, I've been saying that I think Kentucky's going to cut down the nets in New Orleans. I think they're that good. I think they're a tough matchup for Purdue because Oscar Tshiebwe is going to win National Player of the Year at center for them, and there aren't many teams that have a better center than Purdue does, and Kentucky's one of them. Tshiebwe is better than both of Purdue's guys. Granted, the sum of Purdue's parts probably is better than what Tshiebwe is, but that's a really good Kentucky team. They've got good guards. Calipari is a heck of a coach. That's terrifying. If you get out of that, then you have Baylor. They're probably a vulnerable 1 seed, especially if LJ Cryer can't play. He's their leading scorer, hasn't played in a while. They did lose Jonathan Tchamwa-Tchatchoua for the year. That is a big loss for them on the inside. That would matter a lot if Purdue plays them. Scott Drew's a great coach. I'm obviously biased from a Valparaiso family, but that's a pretty good Baylor team. So this draw probably couldn't have been a whole lot tougher for Purdue, but they played their way out of position to some degree. That is the no getting away from fact when you were in prime position after non-conference play and entering the new year. And then, you lost 6 games, and after the new year, 7 total. It's tough. That's reality, though. So Purdue has a bit of an uphill climb. They've been in Milwaukee before, though it was a different arena at that time when they beat Vermont and Iowa State in the 64-32 back in 2017. Iowa State game was crazy. Big time shot by P.J. Thompson to help Purdue there. But it goes without saying that Purdue fans aren't going to be too comfortable with anything. And that's going to start on Friday. Purdue fans are very notoriously looking over their shoulder at all times. And that comes from Little Rock, that comes from North Texas. If you go back a ways, that comes from a heck of a scare from Western Carolina. So Purdue's going to be, the fans at least, will be on high alert on Friday. There's a lot of pressure on this group to do something. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how Purdue's rotation works in the NCAA tournament. I don't see Brandon Newman coming back out. Sasha Stefanovic has struggled a little bit lately, and I think it could help him to, not play the 38 minutes he's been playing for most of Big Ten season, 36, 38 minutes a game. Newman could help there a little bit. I did have a question about, what happened to Caleb First, and he didn't play in 2 of the 3 games this weekend. I want to make sure it's noted. Nothing happened to Caleb First. Caleb First is a center who is playing the 4 right now in some matchups that would have been really tough for him. Especially Iowa. Iowa runs Keegan Murray at the 4. Caleb First isn't going to guard Keegan Murray. Caleb First is too big. It doesn't work like that. I think First is pretty matchup dependent at the 4. So if teams have a bigger guy at the 4 that isn't as much of a ball handler, I think Caleb First makes a lot of sense to go play there. But if you have a smaller guy who's a ball handler who makes plays off the bounce, I think it's tough to have Caleb First in there at the 4 just because of what you do on defense gets very limited at that point. Next year, I think with Caleb First likely sliding to the 5 to get minutes, I think you'll see a much better version of him, especially, just the jump from a freshman to sophomore season is always huge as well. It's been a rough go of things for Isaiah Thompson lately. He's been certainly hearing about it on social media. More to come there momentarily. But I expect more minutes for Eric Hunter Jr. in the tournament, especially with how good he's been. Isaiah Thompson's going to get minutes, though. Someone has to handle the ball, and Eric Hunter's going to do it. Jaden Ivey can do it, but I think you would rather have a point guard out there who's a little bit more sure-handed, someone who is a little bit more controlled, and to use Jaden Ivey off the ball to try to run stuff for him, get him into advantageous matchups, get him open looks from 3, get him going downhill to the basket. I think he's a little bit better off the ball right now. He'll get a ton of minutes too, but Isaiah Thompson is going to play in the NCAA tournament. The question is how much? Is it 6 minutes a game? Is it 12 minutes a game? That's a big difference right there. That's going to be interesting to see. And while we're on, the topic of guys who have been struggling a little bit, Isaiah Thompson, Sasha Stefanovic, there's a whole heck of a lot of vitriol being thrown at this team right now, be it on Twitter, be it on the message boards. Fans aren't happy. And look, I get it. Expectations were high for this group, and they only got higher in that first month. But I promise you that the players want to win as well. They are not trying to miss 3-pointers. They are not trying to miss free throws. It's just part of it. Yes, of course. Missing shots at any level of the game is going to cost you. But these guys are people too. I don't always love the dragging guys through the mud on social media when they're struggling. Like Jordan Bohannon today from Iowa posted all sorts of just terrible messages he's received on Instagram over the years. If you're listening to this and you are someone who has sent direct messages to Purdue players. Please stop. That is not needed. They're trying. They're not trying to lose. I saw a guy on Twitter who was very angry at Stefanovic today because he lost his drinking money betting on Purdue on Sunday. If you're betting money that you don't have on this Purdue team, I recommend stopping. But, look, these guys are people too. They want to win. I know saying that myself probably won't change folks who like to spew things like that on social media, but I'm just trying to do my part here because I do feel for these guys. And really, when Purdue loses games, it's not an individual issue for the most part. The turnover issues aren't an individual problem. They can be at times. Purdue has players who turn the ball over more than others. I'll add that, 3 guys who turn the ball over more than others, Jaden Ivey, Travion Williams, and Zach Edey, are your better players who are the guys who are around defenders more often. So that's going to happen. But, when Purdue turns the ball over 7 times in 10 possessions, that was a team effort. And not in a good way, but it was a team effort. When Purdue misses free throws, when Purdue misses 4 front ends of 1-and-1s, they're not trying to miss free throws, but man, do they hurt. Purdue was 11 of 17 from the free throw line yesterday, recording this Monday night in the loss to Iowa. But that, if you count the other 4 shots that you didn't get the chance to shoot because you missed the front end of the 1-and-1, well, then you're 11 for 21, and that's about 50%. You don't win games doing that. So that's where Purdue beats itself. And part of why Purdue struggles on defense is because they turn the ball over and the other team gets stuff going in transition and are able to score quick. I mean, it all really comes back to turnovers in my mind. And that's going to be a problem for Purdue in the NCAA tournament. As always, matchups are going to be important. I think Texas is a tougher matchup, just in the sense that they have some really experienced guards. I think Kentucky, if Purdue gets there, is a really bad matchup for about everyone in the country. So we'll see how it goes. Purdue also, you can't lose sight of the fact that Purdue's a tough matchup for most teams. Jaden Ivey's tough to guard. Purdue's big guys are tough to guard. And if you get one of them in foul trouble, there's another one. So it goes both ways. I think some chaos is coming in this NCAA tournament, though. It's been a wild season. I don't think there's necessarily a number 1 dominant team out there. Arizona's really good, but, Gonzaga's good. I'll talk more about the tournament here in a minute, but there's some chaos coming, I think. And at this point, it has all come down to this for Purdue. The entire season has led up to the NCAA tournament. And I've said this the last few weeks on the show because I think, every season has a story. And this story of the 2021-22 Purdue team took a massive shift on that Sunday afternoon in November when Purdue came from behind in the last 10 minutes to beat Villanova. Once that happened, the tone for most Purdue fans immediately went to, is this the group that's going to get us to our first Final Four since 1980? That's fair. It's been 42 years. Purdue fans are sure as hell overdue for one. I cannot claim to have been around in 1980. I wasn't even around in 1994 for the Elite Eight then, and I wasn't really old enough to know what was going on in 2000 when Purdue lost in the Elite Eight then. So I can't relate to some of the older fans in that regard, but look, you didn't win the Big Ten. This leaves one opportunity now for Purdue to go win something that puts a banner up in Mackey Arena. This leaves one opportunity, and the only opportunity left for Purdue to do something that its other teams haven't. Purdue has had some fantastic teams since 1980. None of them have gotten to the Final Four. This isn't going to be easy. As I said, Purdue has a really tough draw. But look, it's Jaden Ivey's time to shine. He is Purdue's best NBA prospect since Glenn Robinson. He is going to have the entire basketball world's eyes on him in the NCAA tournament. That starts on Friday. They'll be watching that, and if Purdue keeps advancing, the magnifying glass is only going to get more and more intensified on him because he's that good, he's that special, he's a big-time NBA prospect, he's an All-American. It's his time to shine and go cement something in his legacy at Purdue. It is absolutely legacy time for Eric Hunter Jr., for Sasha Stefanovic, and for Travion Williams. These guys have seen a lot of stuff at Purdue. You know, Stefanovic was on the roster for the 2017-18 team that was in a similar spot. They missed out on a Big Ten regular season title because of a poorly timed loss at a bad Wisconsin team. They lost to a red-hot team in the Big Ten championship game. Michigan ended up getting to the national title that year, for what it's worth for the Hawkeye fans out there. And then, you know, all three of these guys were on the bench for that. Eric Hunter played a good amount in that game against Virginia. In the Elite Eight, they won a Big Ten. They had a less than successful year in the 1920 season that got shut short. They were good last year, but they lost early. These guys have seen a lot. It's time for them to cement the legacy and win something, you know, that's more them. They were certainly a part of that 2019 team, but, you know, that's always going to be Carson Edwards' team. That's going to be Ryan Klein's team. It's going to be Grady Eifert's team. These guys didn't play a ton. This is their time to win something that sets them in Purdue lore and makes the senior class one to remember. Maybe, just maybe, Purdue can get some luck if it advances in the NCAA tournament. There's only one time I can think of, and if I'm wrong, tweet at me, because I'd want to know. The only time I can think of anything besides chalk happening in Purdue's region leading up to the Purdue game where they get bounced is 2011, when Purdue was the 3, they beat St. Peter's. Villanova was the 11. I don't remember who, not Villanova. VCU was the 11. Joey Rodriguez torched Purdue in the round of 32, and VCU got all the way to the Final Four. So that's the only time I can think of. 2009, you lost to a 1-seeded UConn. 2010, a 1-seeded Duke. 17, a 1-seeded Kansas. 18, Purdue lost as a 2-seed to the 3-seeded Texas Tech. 1-seed Virginia. So, yeah, and 2008, Purdue lost a 4-5 game that year. I don't remember if they were the 5 or the 4, but maybe Purdue can get some luck here. Maybe something crazy can happen. You know, maybe if they get out of the first weekend, you know, they can get a 7-seed in Murray State or something. I don't think it's likely, but maybe sometime Purdue can get a nice break here. So, you know, looking ahead here, how far can Purdue go, in my opinion? My opinion means nothing here because the tournament's the tournament. All of you are going to fill out brackets. None of you are going to be right. Hate to break it to you, but you're going to lose some picks here. Purdue can beat anybody in America. That much has been proven. They've beaten a 2-seed Villanova team. I genuinely believe Purdue can beat anybody. At the same time, we've seen it. When Purdue turns the ball over, they can lose to anybody, and that starts on Friday with Yale. I don't think that'll happen, but it's possible. Last year should have taught this group that. It sounded like Travion Williams remembers that very well from his post-game press conference after the Iowa loss. But, you know, Purdue's going to have to play really well here. Texas is scary. You have Courtney Ramey, you have Andrew Jones. Those guys played against Purdue a few years ago. Obviously, it's a much different Purdue team, but they still played against Purdue. Marcus Carr is familiar with Purdue, the point guard at Texas there who came from Minnesota. They defend well. Chris Beard's a good coach. Texas is scary. Kentucky's scary. Baylor is someone you don't really want to play, especially if they get hot. If you make it to the Final Four, anything can happen there. I think realistically, that's a long shot. I'd be pretty surprised if Purdue gets there. You got to at least play to your seed line if you're Purdue. Anything besides a Sweet 16 is going to be incredibly disappointing. If you get to the Sweet 16 and lose to Kentucky, that's a pretty tough pill to swallow, but it's pretty difficult to be upset about losing at your seed line. But I know that's not going to be enough. Purdue fans are going to be really upset if this team loses in the Sweet 16. If Purdue loses this weekend on either Friday or Sunday, it's going to be ugly. And Purdue fans are not going to be happy. It's going to be a disappointing season for Purdue fans if this team doesn't go on a run here. What's it going to take for Purdue to do that? Well, two things. You need to have less than 10 turnovers per game. That's what loss of Purdue's, besides the one at Wisconsin, can you look at and say Purdue turning the ball over wasn't the number one critical factor in that game? I don't think there is one. Outside of that loss at Wisconsin, I think you would like to shoot 35% from three or better. Purdue is a good three-point shooting team that has not shot the ball well of late, so maybe they're due for some luck to reverse there. Get shots falling, especially for Stefanovic, for Newman, for Jaden Ivey. If Isaiah Thompson gets good looks for him, Purdue's got to knock down some shots. And ultimately, Purdue's offensive rebounding is going to be key. That's one of your biggest advantages that you have over opponents. If you can leverage that and you can limit opposing teams in what they do on the offensive glass, because Purdue's offensive rebounding advantage gets negated quite a bit if the other team is getting their own offensive rebounds as well. So it'll be interesting to see how Purdue can do that. But, hey, this is the best time of the year. Try to enjoy it for more than what, Purdue itself is, because it's going to be a blast. Thursday and Friday are the two best days of the year. Thursday, you get to just relax and enjoy it. Friday, Purdue plays early. If Purdue wins, then you get a stress-free Friday night and can check out Texas and Virginia Tech. Get a little scouting in for yourselves. Wanted to jump in here to the Q&A. Thank you to everyone who sent questions. Have a lot of them here. A lot of multiple questions in one tweet, so I love that. First off, who needs to step up for Purdue to get to the national championship? To get to the national championship, a lot of guys. I don't think Purdue can go on a run without Jaden Ivey looking like a lottery pick out there. Him to command the floor well, to limit turnovers, to make good decisions with the ball. That's going to be critical. I think you need Sasha Stefanovic knocking down more three-pointers than he has lately. We all know he's a capable shooter. You'd love to see him get rolling. And Purdue's big guys, they're your rocks. They're your guys that when you need a bucket, they need to help you get that. I think they will. I have no reason to think they won't. But to get to the championship, it's going to take a team effort, and that's going to need to be led by Jaden Ivey. Am I a fool for having us, meaning Purdue, win it all? Well, you're bold. You have more confidence than I do. Putting a 3 seed to win your bracket is aggressive to begin with. That's regardless of the year. That's aggressive to begin with. So credit to you. I respect that. That's how you win a bracket pool. It's also how you get blown out of the bracket pool by the second weekend. But, look, Purdue, as I said, they've shown every capability to beat anyone in the country this year. Can they play that well for 6 games in a row? And if they don't need to play their A game against Yale. It'll take at least your B game, and you have to do it for the next 5 games. So we'll see if Purdue can do that, but are you a fool? No, you're just aggressive. Could Texas be a bit of a trap game? No way. You got to beat Yale first, obviously, but Texas should not sneak up on anyone. They are a preseason top 10 team. They're loaded with experience. They're loaded with, they're an old team. They've got a ton of guys who have been around college basketball for forever. They play defense really well. I'd be stunned if this group isn't looking at Chris Beard's team like the legitimate threat they are to knock them out of the tournament, because while the season hasn't gone as well as Texas hoped, they have every possibility to go on a deep run here this month. And then following that up, could Purdue keep up with Kentucky? Yes, I think so, but they're really good. They are really good. They have good guard play. They have a good big guy. They have everything you need. They're not a great three-point shooting team outside of Kellen Grady, so you like that, but Kentucky would be a heck of a challenge for Purdue, and you just got to get there first. You get there first, and that's a problem you worry about on Sunday night if you come out of Milwaukee still alive. This was an interesting question. Should Ivy consider being less selfish, dish the ball off more? I don't know that it's a selfish thing. I don't view Jaden Ivey as an incredibly selfish player necessarily, because there are times where he's a pretty good facilitator. I thought we saw that on Friday and Saturday of the Big Ten tournament. I think the one thing that you would like to stop with Jaden Ivey is the kill shot 3 attempts. And I'll add that Sasha Stefanovic does this as well. I can't think of many times this year, because these guys both do it a decent amount, that the shot clock still has more than 20 seconds left on it, and they've drilled their 3 from up towards the top of the key from a few feet beyond the arc. I'm sure it's happened a time or two, but the percentage has to be really low. You'd love to see Jaden Ivey not take those, and then when he drives to the basket, it's just about reading the defense. And I know opposing defenses are certainly trying to confuse him with how they attack him when he goes to the basket, but just making the simple play. Finding the open man if they come. If they don't come and you've got a matchup, go to the rim, get fouled, see if you can get an and one, convert however you need to. But just decision making, I think, is what Purdue needs Jaden Ivey to be firing on all cylinders at here to go on a run. Was Brandon Newman's comeback in Painter's plans all along? It's a great story if it was, but no, I don't think so. I would be very, very surprised if that's the case. But, hey, I guess you never know. There were some real concerns about what Purdue had been getting from him in December and January, and playing 10 is really, really hard to do, especially at a position where Sasha Stefanovic and Jaden Ivey eat up a lot of minutes. Ethan Morton was giving you really good value, and it's tough to get minutes for a 4th guy there. I think they'll find a way to do it, especially because against smaller teams, Ethan Morton's your better option at the 4 than Caleb First. So I think you'll see Newman more, but no, I don't think Matt Painter, when Brandon Newman had his first DNP of the season at Penn State back in early January, I don't think Matt Painter was sitting there with him on the bench thinking, I can't wait to unleash him against the Nittany Lions on the Friday of the Big Ten tournament. What's wrong with Sasha Stefanovic? Well, that's a tough question. Obviously, he hasn't been knocking down shots as well as he has before, as well as he's capable of. I don't know how big of a concern that finger is. You'll remember he hurt his finger up at Wisconsin in that Wisconsin game. He's had a couple of good shooting games since then. Had some big shots against Indiana. Went 2 of 5 from 3 against Michigan State. But you're right, it wasn't a good weekend for him. You just got to hope that finger's all right. You need him to get back to his shooting touch. I would imagine he's down below 40% on the year now. Yeah, you just need him to get back in the rhythm. And obviously you hope it happens. And if it does, then he's a weapon that is one of the best shooters in the country. If not, then, it takes away an element of the offense that's really important to what Purdue does. I think he'll be all right. I think he'll rise to the occasion. And then finally, a good question to close on here because it's on everyone's mind right now. It's on Twitter all the time. Is the 9 to 10 man rotation the best way to go? Or is it time to pull the plug on Isaiah Thompson and Caleb First? As I mentioned earlier in the show here, Isaiah Thompson gets a good amount of playing time because someone has to play point guard, and I don't think Purdue wants Jaden Ivey running the point. I think Purdue wants Jaden Ivey off the ball. Asking Eric Hunter to play all 40 is tough. Now, I think he's going to play more and more in the NCAA tournament. I'll add that all of this in terms of minutes and, the rotation, that's all determined based off foul trouble. Anything that I say here, I don't think Isaiah Thompson's going to get a ton of minutes in the tournament, but if it's Friday at the under 12 and Eric Hunter just picked up his second foul, then yeah, Isaiah Thompson's going to be out there. If it's Friday and Mason Gillis, who has picked up fouls early on in games a lot recently, if he picks up 2 fouls and there's still 14 minutes to play in the first half, you're going to see Caleb First, even if it's not the best matchup, just because that's what has to happen. But no, I think Thompson's still going to play. You'll see less of him. I think you'll see about 6 minutes of him a game, 6 to 8 is my guess. And then with Caleb First, I think it's entirely matchup dependent. I haven't worked through previews for Texas and Virginia Tech yet, but, if they've got 4 guys who are a little bit less mobile, then yeah, Caleb First makes sense to go play out there. If not, then you're probably going to see more Ethan Morton. That one's entirely matchup based the way it was in the in the Big Ten tournament. Wanted to close up here just with a few thoughts on the NCAA tournament. I'm sick of Gonzaga. If they don't, at some point they have to win this thing or else I'm just going to keep being frustrated by them. It's not their fault. They can't go join a big conference because they're a little tiny school that doesn't play football. But my goodness, it's so frustrating to not see them play anyone remotely challenging after the new year every single season, and then they're the 1 seed. They're the number 1 overall seed. They drive me nuts. They haven't beaten a 4 seed or better since 2016. I know when you're a 1 seed, you're more likely to get better luck, but my goodness, can Purdue get some of that eventually? I mean, they haven't beaten a 1 seed since I was in high school. That is insane. It drives me crazy. There are some really interesting matchups here in the first round. I've got the bracket here. I think Rutgers, if they get by Notre Dame, them against Alabama could be really fun. We've got a Foster Lawyer revenge game down in the Carolinas. He gets Michigan State. He's at Davidson now. Fletcher will be watching that one as well as Purdue. Indiana, them in Wyoming, the winner against St. Mary's. Murray State, San Francisco, and Purdue's region. Those are a couple of really good mid-majors. Everyone has South Dakota State over Providence. I do too. Colgate, Wisconsin. I think that's going to be a really fun game. If you've listened to the show for a while, I love a good Indiana reference. Colgate, Jack Ferguson, Fort Wayne Homestead guy. I'll be rooting for him for sure. What else do we got here? Ohio State, Loyola, Chicago. I'm not sure how I'm going to pick that one yet because I watch a decent amount of Missouri Valley basketball. I don't think this Loyola team's all that great. I don't think Ohio State's that good either, and they haven't played well of late. I don't know that Michigan should have been in the tournament. I don't love a 17 and 14 team getting in just based off the principle involved. At some point, your record needs to matter. I think they'll beat Colorado State, though. I think it's going to be one of those things where Michigan gets in. There's plenty of reasons to not put them in, but they're going to win a game. So it looks like the committee did right. It's going to be a fun tournament. I cannot wait to see what all goes down here. The seeding was interesting. Tennessee probably should have been a 2. Duke should not have been a 2. Duke should have been lower, but, you know, it's Mike Krzyzewski's last year. Got to get those ratings up. Also got to put that game on CBS so the national audience can get to see Duke versus Cal State Fullerton. If it was baseball, Cal State Fullerton would be fun to watch. This is basketball. CBS doesn't need that game, but goodness, they got it. I can't wait, man. This is the most fun time of the year. It is going to be a blast, and it's going to be the first real tournament we've had in 3 years because 2020 didn't happen. Last year was just bizarre, seeing everything happen with no fans in the stands. It was just different. So this is going to be a lot of fun. But first, I do want to thank all of you who have been around all season. Your guys' support means a lot. I love doing the show. I love hearing from you. If you have any thoughts, comments, questions, anything about the show, send it to me on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. But that's all I have for you for this week. If you don't already, follow the show on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I'm always going to be posting new stuff. We'll be keeping the conversation alive. Hopefully, we will be back here next week to preview Purdue's trip to Philadelphia. But knock on wood, you never know how that's going to go. They've got themselves a big weekend ahead. Please enjoy the NCAA tournament. If you're like me and took the 2 days off work, enjoy that. Enjoy your time off. It's the best 2 days of the year. Enjoy it, folks, and I will talk to you again next week.